actually thinks she can steal my hairstyle. It doesn't matter if she had this hairstyle before me. Now that I'm using it, it's officially mine. There's only enough room for one set of purple drills in this school.
Hey, you guys know what time it is. I hope I didn't keep you waiting for too long, but I'm finally ready to share my concepts for the theater girl. But before that, as always for new people, this is a series. I linked a playlist below for your convenience, and there will be a lot of context you'll be missing without it, so I highly recommend that you check those videos out. But before diving into the video, I do want to address some questions and concerns that I have noticed. We'll be going through these one point at a time. Seriously, last video is extremely important context for this one, because I renamed the current cast, and this will be the only time I will bring this up. Ayano is now Ichika, Taro is now named Naoji, Osana will be named Hinabi, and Amai is named Yuki. Got it? Cool. Speaking of last video, I'm sure most of you were curious about how the series will change, since this is my story from now on. I did address this in the comment of that video, but just in case, my series will not be changing its format. I'm still going to be using Yandere redesigns in my titles, and technically these do fall under redesign since I'm still pulling ideas from the game, even if the characters are drastically different, but that's besides the point. It's also easier for newer audiences to find my series, and in short, my videos will be exactly the same as before. Just note that the story and characters are meant to be my own now. Even though the Amai video was mostly well received, I noticed some lingering concerns about how I'm handling body diversity. The thing is, I didn't have time to fully clarify this before because again, I was concerned about the runtime in that video, so let me clarify things now. I am still going to represent different body types in my series, but every rival will still be fit. A big reason for this is because Yuki is meant to be a direct reflection of my personal experiences as a chubby Asian girl, and how extreme beauty standards hurt her. Her thicker build also makes her feel excluded as the only plump girl at her school, and it feeds directly into her insecurities, which was a big theme I kept pointing out in her video. And it's important to note that my story takes place in an era that is especially harsh towards women with its toxic beauty standards. I know some people will still disagree with my stance on this, and that is fine, but I just wanted to communicate this because this is my story and I want to tell it the way I want to. I've been getting comments about this for a while and I intentionally haven't responded for a reason. Look, I know you guys are all excited about my ideas and what direction I'm going to take with the future rivals, and all I will say is that I have had them planned out for a long while, but I'm refining my ideas as the series continues. So to reiterate, I already have a direction for all of my rivals. I just don't want to tell you guys what that direction is until their videos come. You guys are still free to speculate on what I may do for the future rivals, but I'm letting you know in advance that I already have a set direction for each of them. And again, I won't be saying anything about them until they are relevant to the story. Okay, last point. A lot of you were commenting about how you were actually willing to listen to long-form content, which makes sense since most of you are probably doing something as I'm talking in the background. So just to try something new, we're going to test the waters with this video. I'm probably going to regret this in the editing phase. Other than that, I think that should be all of the concerns that I wanted to address before getting into Kizana. So let's finally get into Snop here. First things first, I'm already going to rename Kizana. My version of her will be called Ito Rina. If I ever use the name Kizana, then it's in referral to the original Yandere character. That aside, I was genuinely surprised with how passionate you guys were when expressing your opinions about Kizana. I was under the impression that people mutually agreed that her character felt pretty irrelevant, but compared to Osana and Amai's polls, you guys seemed way more vocal about Kizana compared to them. I did notice a strong pattern where you either have the side that hates Kizana with a burning passion because she essentially replaced Kokona, or you have the side that loves her for what she is, which is an unlikable diva. Personally, I don't really care about Kizana. But then again, I don't really care about a lot of Yandere characters because none of them really seem to evoke any sort of emotion within me. And this commenter here actually articulated my thoughts perfectly. The reason why it's difficult to feel anything for a Yonsim character is because they are just surface level archetypes. Of course, everyone does have personal preferences, but generally speaking, it doesn't seem like a lot of people resonate with these characters. I mean, there are certain characters that are extremely controversial, but that's not due to their writing. That's just because they are clearly meant to be a representation of Alex's taste, to put it lightly. But usually what Yonsim characters lack in writing, they make up for in their designs. And speaking of designs, I think Kizana looks like dog. Okay, that was harsh, but hear me out. The official art looks fine at a glance, but the 3D model just feels pretty tacky, especially because the model's uniform can't support her bust size, which honestly makes her look pretty jank. And in comparison to Osana and Amai, it made me realize how spoiled I was when looking into their designs. I do understand what Alex was trying to go for, since Kizana is meant to embody the Himedere archetype, but this design doesn't sell it for me. Either way though, I am going to be scrapping the anime tropes entirely, so I won't be keeping that aspect of her character, but I am still going to keep the fact that she is meant to be a diva. This way, I can still keep some part of Kizana into Rina, but also this could clash with Ichiga's character. I'm gonna be straight up, this is gonna be a rant segment, so buckle up. Before anyone starts typing in the comments, yes, I do know the reason why Kizana is heavily disliked, because like I said, she essentially replaced Kokona. Personally, even as a younger fan, that never bothered me, but I understand why people would feel this way. Kokona was a beloved NPC, and Kizana is just her unlikable counterpart. That said, I'm not replacing Kizana with Kokona. We already have two friendly rivals, and not every character needs to be likable in order to be well written. And once again, no, I am not including the NPCs. I understand the attachment, but I'm already juggling a huge cast, and I'm not bloating the plot just to please people. To put things into better perspective, look at the rival roster. Now look at the number of NPCs in the game. Imagine me redesigning all of them now. You guys are crazy if you think I'm going to do all of that. Even if I keep popular characters like Kokona, Udo, Raibaru, and even the Gyaru girls, they don't contribute to my version of the story. And to be honest, the rival roster itself is already pretty long. If it weren't for my nostalgia for the game, I would have cut the list down a long time ago, so just be lucky I'm even deciding to redesign every rival. Now let's go through this again. I'm not keeping the NPCs. If you really want to see the NPCs, then go check out other redesigned series that do keep them. Otherwise, please stop asking me about this. This will be the last time I ever bring this up. Okay, rant over, let's get into the redesign discussion. This is pretty early on in the video, but I wanted to be upfront and admit that you guys won't like my take on Rina. I know that I said this for Yuki's video, but I felt like the direction I was taking with Yuki was a bit more safe compared to Rina, since a lot of people have already made interpretations of Amai that is extremely similar. But here's the thing. I know that usually when people redesign Kizana, they make her the rich popular girl type of character, and my take is not going to be that. In fact, my character comes from humble beginnings, and her family is decently well off, but their income isn't any different from other citizens of Kanashima. And another thing, Rina's character will not be centered around Western theater. Of course, I'm not saying Japanese people can't engage in Western culture, they have before, and it's been heavily represented in anime numerous times. But I'm honestly not interested in pursuing this direction. You see, the truth is, I'm not a big musical theater fan. Okay, yeah, I know. Controversial opinion here. But to be fair, I'm not dunking on Broadway. I'm just not a big fan of the genre. So, sorry guys, but it's just not my cup of tea. However, what I am interested in is Asian theater, especially because of Chinese opera, which is close to my family's background, and that interest led me to center Rina's character around Japanese theater, respectfully. And I specifically decided to choose kabuki. Not only does this allow me to incorporate some culture into her story, but it gives me something fun to research. I do feel like giving the context to Kabuki theater's history is important so my explanations can make sense. But as always, any Japanese netizens out there, feel free to correct me if I get anything wrong. One of the biggest reasons why I chose Kabuki was because it was originally founded by a woman, later banned due to escort work, which disturbed the morals, quote unquote, and this was soon followed by young boys replacing women who were also banned for the same reasons. Disturbing, but that's history for you. Ultimately, this did establish Kabuki as an all-male tradition that largely persists today, and from what I've gathered, there is an alternative for women, which is Nihonbuyo, which is slightly relevant to Rina's story, but we'll get into that later. I also feel the need to clarify that since my story takes place in the past, it's also important to note that traditional Japanese theater went through a decline around World War II before it was revived around the 40s. So I imagine that for Kaneshima, a theater for Kabuki likely exists, but it would be relatively small. It's also a key aspect to Rina's development, but that's pretty much all of the context. Anyways, like always, I made different hairstyle variations for you guys to vote. I do want to address how some of you have been asking where the voting system is being held, and I post these on my YouTube Shorts and TikTok. Getting back on track, I decided to go with hairstyle number 1. This probably sucks for people that really loved 4 and 5, which I noticed was the huge majority. I do understand that the attraction comes from the fact that it resembles a Hollywood actor-like style, and also it resembles Kizana's original hair, but to be honest, I didn't want to go through that direction. Instead, I wanted to put emphasis on Rina being an advocate for natural beauty. I know a lot of you didn't like the forehead, but Rina doesn't need the bangs, because showing her forehead is supposed to symbolize how prideful she is in her appearance. I also was trying to emphasize this in her face by leaning into softer Japanese features, which you'd see in a traditional painting. This would feed into her ego because she sees herself as a work of art. Also, I want to mention that some people pointed out how Rina's face resembles a no mask, which wasn't intentional, but I did like this resemblance because it does tie into her theater theme. I also gave her a similar body type to Ichika, which will be really relevant because I did decide to make their dynamic revolve around Rinko and Hinako, but I won't be going into that until the story segment. But as always, I drew her in the standard uniform variations, and I shortened her socks to lean into a more classy girly style. I didn't make her design super flashy, but it's alright because the real substance is supposed to be in her lore. Before proceeding, I'm going to put a massive trigger warning here. If you are sensitive to mentions of self-harm, or you are uncomfortable with mentions of self-harm, and even deep discussions and depictions of it, please click off. You don't have to watch this video, and stay safe. I also want to add some more clarifications before diving into the story. In Yuki's video, some people assumed that the extra illustration that I drew was supposed to represent her pacifist route, and I just want to clarify that it wasn't. It was just meant to look nice and function as a hypothetical promo art for the game. The same idea goes for Rina's illustration, so just putting that out there. Another thing, I wanted to divide the story into 3 arcs. Each arc introduces 4 characters. Arc 1 focuses on Ichika, Naoshi, Hinabi, and Yuki. After that, there is a time skip, which leads into Arc 2. This will revolve around Rina, Oka, Asu, and Muja. The same structure will follow into Arc 3, which is the final arc. And I also want to remind you guys that there will only be 2 elimination methods. This will be the Pacifist and Massacre route. Again, I want to focus on the story aspect of the game, and having multiple elimination methods like bullying, expelling, and so on ruins my vision. Those extra methods would only apply if this hypothetical game was like the original sandbox style of Yansim, but it's not. I hope that clears things up for you guys. Moving on, like I mentioned before, Rina isn't going to be a theater kid, and I don't want her to become a Regina George copycat. I simply want Rina to be an egotistical bitch. What you see is who she is. Even so, she is still human, and she's as much of a victim of the patriarchal system that everyone else in my story faces. This is especially relevant with Rina's obsession with kabuki. From a young age, she has begged her parents to attend every performance, desperately wishing to be part of that world, but because she's a girl, she couldn't realistically achieve that dream. So to make up for this, she joins a small club centered around Nihon Buyo, which doesn't have the same flair kabuki owns that attracts Rina, but she makes do with the hand that she's given. Outside of her passion, Rina lives comfortably with her humble family of 5. Well, now 3. Her older sisters have been married off to promising families, and the same will be done to Rina with her coming closer to womanhood. The thing is, Rina doesn't want to become a bride, she wants to pursue a career. She has tried to convince her parents to let her work for her dreams, but her wishes are easily dismissed. Time and time again, her parents have shut down these dreams because they know it's unrealistic, and they have to be real with Rina. You have to also understand that her parents aren't bad people. They are just trying to do what they think is best for their daughter, and in this era, women are either better off as homemakers or blue-collar workers. And with Rina being born in a nowhere place like Kanashima, becoming an actress is just out of the question. Rina's circumstances teaches her about an important reality. Women must obey the system, or they will be punished. It's a harsh truth, but Rina isn't the type of girl to sit around and plead for her life to change. She knows that there is no point in rebelling against the system, but maybe it's possible to outperform it. To add some more depth, it's important to note that Rina is a perfectionist. She's gone out of her way to cut people out of her life to preserve perfection. She doesn't really care about what others think because she is her own worst critic. But this doesn't come from a place of insecurity. No, Rina's criticisms are what helps her constantly self-improve, and if anything, she loves herself toxically, which pushes her to extremes in order to uphold the image that she's built for herself. And when it comes to her dreams, she'll sacrifice anything to climb to the top, even if it means she gets hurt in that process. One of my main inspirations for Rina is based on the movie Black Swan. If you haven't watched it, I highly recommend you do, because not only is it a good movie, but I'm going to be getting into some spoilers. The reason why Black Swan was a perfect movie to reference is because of its themes revolving around obsession, perfection, and self-destruction. These factors were what heavily influenced Rina's character, and this is how I plan on tying her with Ichika. As I said before, every rival reflects something from Ichika, and I decided that Rina reflects Ichika's obsession. Both are determined to get what they want, and they act out on violent tendencies just to achieve those goals. But here's the thing. We know Ichika is violent towards others to preserve her happy ending, but Rina is violent towards herself to preserve her perfection. This isn't just done by strict schedules or intense practice sessions. Rina hurts herself on purpose by scratching. I want to make it clear that I'm not adding this to make her sympathetic, and I'm not doing this to glorify her actions, or even just to be edgy. Rina's self-harm is a reflection of her obsessive tendencies, and her need for control over a situation. She doesn't self-harm because it's a form of relief. It's a form of correction. Of course, she hides her scars, but it's not out of shame. She only covers herself to feel contained. I should point out that Rina is 17 in my story, but her parents have found out about this behavior long before. She has been admitted to a hospital, but the only solution that she was given was to be prescribed with a certain medication. Because remember, Kanashima is a small town, so I don't imagine that the resources for the hospital staff is great. And real quick, I know that self-harm is an extremely sensitive topic, so I feel the need to clarify that I have also had experiences with this. So I do feel like I have some authority to speak on this issue, but my experiences don't speak for everyone, and I never faced anything similar to Rina's situation. I just want to make that clear so it doesn't seem like I'm including this just to be edgy or to add shock value. And again, Rina's inspiration comes from the movie Black Swan, and the main character in that movie does struggle with some form of self-harm. And this stems from her need for perfection. And like I said, Rina directly parallels Ichika. I wanted the girls to be two sides of the same coin. They struggle from a system of generational trauma and patriarchy, and they both react in violent ways. But the thing is, Ichika follows the system, but she looks sideways because she wants what other women have in order to conform to that role. But Rina is self-assured enough to know that she has what other girls don't. Ichika looks sideways, but Rina looks forward. But unlike Ichika, Rina acknowledges the system, and she uses that knowledge to work around it. This is where Rinko and Hinako's relationship directly influences Rina and Ichika. Most people assume that because Ichika is the main character, that she would be based around Hinako. And you're not exactly incorrect, but the similarities only come from the two being protagonists of a setting that suffers from a patriarchal system. Otherwise, Ichika has more qualities closer to Rinko than Hinako. Rina isn't exactly different from this, but she's more of a hybrid between Rinko and Hinako in a sense. You see, in Silent Hill F, Rinko is turned against other women because the system sets her up to do so, and Rina is no different from that. But unlike Rinko, Rina takes some aspects from Hinako, where she doesn't follow the system directly, and she, in her own way, defies it by trying to take advantage of it. And some additional information is that Rina despises men, because her whole life was dictated by men. This comes from her father, instructors, teachers, and so on. I should clarify that most of the men that Rina meets aren't even terrible, but none of them respect her as an individual because they just see her as a little girl. And the only way she has managed to earn any ounce of respect was by manipulating the system through her charisma. But the principle of her even having to do that pisses her off. Rina hates the concept of her gender being the sole reason why she doesn't deserve respect. It irritates her that as a woman, she has to do more to prove that she is equal to a man. So for Rina's flower reveal, I'm sure a lot of you were suspecting that it was going to be a rose, since Kizana has a whole rose theme going on. But I didn't want to go for that route because I didn't feel like a rose matches Rina's character. Instead, I decided to choose Wisteria, because not only does it fit with Rina's color scheme, but it is also heavily associated with Kabuki. Not to mention that it is known to be poisonous, so that could tie in with Rina's toxic personality. I also thought it would be kind of ironic because Wisteria represents humility, which is the opposite of Rina. But yeah, that's pretty much it, so let's move on to the Pacifist route. Like I said in the last video, there will be an upcoming school festival. After Yuki leaves, Ichika will go back to working on her previous task for the school festival. Rina is the one to approach Ichika first. This is because she needs some assistance with her upcoming performance, and this performance will be a big deal for Rina's story. Some of you may be wondering why Rina wouldn't ask her club members for assistance. The reason for this is because none of them likes Rina, therefore she doesn't trust them. But why would she trust Ichika, you may ask? Well, she doesn't. But Ichika is a girl from the city, and she's also new to the school, meaning she doesn't hold any biases. And I should probably mention by now that most of the girls in school aren't fond of Rina, and these are for obvious reasons. It's also important to note that Ichika is canonically conventionally attractive, and Rina only wants to be seen with the best. And with Ichika's stats, Rina has the impression that Ichika must have some sort of class. This is also why I made their body types similar, because Ichika is meant to be Rina's perfect stand-in. And I believe that Ichika would only agree to work with Rina because she's not a very confrontational person, so she sees no reason why she should decline, so long as she gets to go home with Naoji in the afternoon like always. Story-wise, Ichika will spend a few days getting to know Rina, and this will build a structure for the schedule, and this schedule will be important for game implementation. But after practice, Naoji will be there to pick up Ichika, which gives Rina a smooth opportunity to sway Naoji to help promote her new upcoming play. This is where I can get into Naoji and Rina's relationship. In the original Yansim, Kizana uplifts Taro through the art of acting. This cutscene was supposed to be read as wholesome, but obviously Kizana uplifts Senpai for selfish reasons. In Rina's case, I want to amp up the fact that she's deceptive, because again, She uses her charisma to her advantage because she thinks that men are easy to manipulate. But that isn't the case for Naoji. Yes, he is extremely friendly, but that doesn't mean he isn't sharp. It's easy for him to see through Rina's deception, but he plays along because he wants Ichika to have more friends. Even though Rina is extremely pompous and it's clear that she is a bit toxic, Naoji firmly believes that anyone can change, especially Rina. Naoji will help promote Rina's play to the townspeople, but in return, Rina has to build a connection with Ichika. I don't believe that Rina would genuinely try to form a connection, but she will make it appear like she is forming a connection just to get Naoji off her back. Of course, Naoji and Rina aren't aware that Ichika is secretly listening in on the conversation. She isn't able to hear everything, but she can make out some important tidbits. This alone is enough to set Ichika off, and she will start her investigation on Rina. When you spare both Yuki and Hinabi, the two will give you some insight on Rina from their perspectives. Hinabi's experiences with Rina were mostly backhanded compliments that Hinabi honestly thought were genuine compliments. Yuki in particular has had unpleasant but not malicious encounters with Rina. And through the pen pal mechanic, Yuki will share some of her experiences and give Ichika some important insight on Rina's character. Because Rina's family has went to Yuki's father's food stall a couple of times, which can give the player some insight into Rina's family dynamic. With this info in mind, Ichika is apprehensive to get close to Rina, but she has to get close in order to understand more about her. Even though Rina doesn't want to get close with Ichika, she did make a deal with Naoji. And the big conflict here is how I'm going to make these two girls get along when they clearly don't like each other, and it's a bit worse compared to Ichika and Yuki's situation. But here's the thing, I don't want Ichika and Rina to get along. They are meant to contradict each other, and they aren't meant to mix together. It's pretty much an oil and water type of situation. And I already hear you guys wondering, but casserole, wouldn't that defeat the purpose on your commentary about feminism? And my answer to that is, not really. And you'll see what I mean in a minute. So here is how I want things to go down game implementation wise. As the player spends time getting to know Rina, you aren't building a friendship with her, you are understanding her. And during your week of helping Rina, she will use Ichika as her personal water girl. Ichika will also be the person to be sent to the infirmary in order to retrieve Rina's meds. You are essentially helping Rina prep for everything instead of being her direct dance partner. During these tasks, I imagine that there will be gameplay for this, where you have to fulfill Rina's tasks perfectly under a certain amount of time. And when you perform Rina's tasks perfectly to a T, Rina will be able to explain to Ichika why this performance is so important to her. As I previously mentioned, Rina's family doesn't believe in her passion for theater. They just want what's best for her, and they believe what's best for her is marrying her off to a promising family. But again, that isn't what Rina wants for herself. She wants to push for her dreams. She believes in hard work and discipline. The purpose of the performance isn't to just get several eyes on her, it's to show people who she is. It's to let her parents see her. Rina desperately hopes that her parents can recognize her potential, and hopefully they will let go of this idea that she needs to be married off. And this part isn't necessarily related to Rina's story, but I wanted her to perform Musume Dojoji. If you know what it is, then you would know why I decided to reference it. From what I've seen, it's a solo dance, which is perfect for Rina since she wants all eyes to be on her. But this leads to another big question. Why would Ichika want to help Rina if she has been nothing but demanding of her? Well, simple answer. Naoji. Rina and Naoji do get off on the wrong foot. But again, Naoji isn't going to judge her based on one bad interaction. And while the two continue to interact with each other each time he picks up Ichika from Rina's place, I believe that Rina and Naoji do become closer in a sense. Not romantically, nor is it platonic. I just believe that they would grow to respect each other. Because even though Naoji acknowledges that Rina isn't a good person, he respects her discipline. And Rina isn't fond of Naoji because she believes he's like every other man, but she can admit that he is chivalrous. And during Naoji and Ichika's walk back home to their neighborhood, he will encourage Ichika to give Rina a chance. Because like Hinabi and Yuki, maybe there's something deeper to her. Remember how I mentioned that Rina sends Ichika out to fetch her meds? This is how the player can acknowledge Rina's self. In the game, it will never be brought up and it's only there for players to speculate and understand more of her character. Ichika will take note of this in her journal, but she will never bring it up. But to Rina, she's self-assured. She knows she has struggles, but she doesn't see these as weaknesses. And to clarify, just because Rina doesn't view this as something unhealthy, it doesn't negate the fact that this is problematic behavior. Just to set the scene, the school festival is meant for the citizens of Kaneshima to spectate on the new generation. And usually in Japanese school festivals, it seems like families are encouraged to come and join these festivals. Citizens that do not belong to families have to receive an invitation, but I imagine that since Kaneshima's school system is small, that mostly anyone could come. Besides that, when the festival day comes, the week prior to the festival where Ichika spends time being Rina's water girl is meant to be a practice round, and the festival is the real round where you have to get everything set and ready for Rina. Depending on how you play, things should run smoothly. After the gameplay, there should be a cutscene where Rina's parents do congratulate her, but even though her performance was well done, I don't think that's all it will take for Rina's parents to change their mind about marrying her off. However, I do imagine that maybe they would postpone the marriage and give Rina some time to fully come to terms with the fact that she still has to get married. Once again, Rina will be reminded of her harsh reality. After the festival ends, Rina will ask Ichika to meet her around Kaneshima's train station. Here, you will unlock Rina's special location. Ichika will make an excuse to her parents that she's just going to run some errands, which they believe her. But obviously you're going to see Rina. When you find Rina, you'll find her suited up, packed, and ready to go. It's clear that she's running away. Even though both Rina and Ichika previously didn't like each other, I imagine that they won't become friends, but they will have a mutual respect from now on. The reason why Rina would summon her water girl to bid her farewell is to give Ichika one final task. She will ask you to deliver her letter to her family. And when you click on it, it's clearly her goodbye letter. Along with it is her hairpin that came with her costume from the previous performance. This will be Rina's special item for Ichika. Rina will tell Ichika, "I'm leaving Kaneshima. There's nothing for me here. This place is far too outdated for me anyways. So I'll try to make it big in the city." This plan is obviously reckless, but teens running away isn't unheard of. While Ichika is a bit worried for Rina, she won't stop her, because again, Rina is her own person and she will make choices for herself. All you can do is let her go. And based on your mutual respect for each other, Ichika learns a lesson from Rina, which is passion and individuality. Rina failing her goal of trying to change her parents' mind teaches Ichika about her goal towards Naoji. Does she really love Naoji for him? Or does she love him to fulfill a status quo? You guys know the deal by now, but I'm still going to put a trigger warning. If you are sensitive to mentions of death or depictions of death, please click off for your safety. Similar to Yuki's story, everything will play the same as the Pacifist route, but there are some minor differences. Because this is the Massacre route, this means that Hinabi and Yuki are gone, so you aren't given as much insight into Rina's character like the Pacifist route. Still, everything will mostly play out the same. But here's the twist. In the practice round before Rina's performance, you will still have to perform everything to a T. After all, that's how Rina's going to let you stay as her water girl. But during her performance, you will mess everything up.
You can tear a hole in Rina's costume, you can take away her meds, you can make her miss her cue, and you further prove to Rina's parents that she isn't ready for the stage. After Rina's performance, you will still be summoned to the train station, but this time it isn't as bittersweet as before. Instead, Rina is extremely pissed at Ichika because you were supposed to get things done perfectly, but you ruined her chance, and she will blame everything on Ichika. Still, she wants to run away, and she only summoned Ichika to make up for her mistakes. I'm giving you one last chance to prove yourself. Deliver this note to my family, and maybe I'll forgive you for what you did. In the scene, the train station is a bit crowded, but both Rina and Ichika are much shorter than the other citizens that surround them. Ichika will use this to her advantage, and when Rina is still speaking down to Ichika, Ichika trips Rina, resulting in her falling, and to Rina's dismay, her leg gets caught in the rail. She screams for help, but you get away from the scene, and the next day, the townspeople mourn for Rina. Everyone except for Ichika, of course. But amongst the wails and the cries and the fear that spreads throughout the town,
a certain Takahashi becomes suspicious. 3 victims, all girls that go to the same school. Each incident was either coincidental or left as a mystery. Something isn't right here, and Naoji intends to uncover what that is. And with that, we've reached our conclusion for this video. To be honest, I didn't think that I would have this much fun working on Rina, but I'm honestly impressed with myself with how I handled her story. But aside from that, I want to know what you guys think in the comments. You can give me your feedback or your general opinions, just be respectful, of course. And I'm sure a lot of you are going to have some speculations on how I'll handle Oka, but I'm going to let you know right now that her video won't be next, because since I've been working on Yonsen videos back to back, I feel like I deserve to make a video for myself, so stay tuned for what that could possibly be. I'm also going to take the chance to share some fan edits and fan art that I have been receiving, which thank you so much for submitting your art and your fan edits. It means a lot to me, and it really makes the series more enjoyable for me to make. Your nice comments also motivate me, and it's really crazy to see how big my audience has become, because I'm looking at my subscriber count and I'm almost at 10k. Sorry, I know this is cheesy, but like, I never thought that I would become a YouTuber in my life, so seeing my dreams become a reality through my redesign videos, it's surreal. Okay, I need to quit being a cornball. But seriously, thank you so much for your support. It means everything to me, and I'm so excited to share what other plans I have for the series, because again, like I said in the beginning of this video, I have had every rival planned out way before I even started the series, and I'm super excited to see how you guys will react to each of my plans. But with that said, I'm finally out, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye!
I saw that, you disgusting pervert. That's absolutely unacceptable.